The date was the 21st of May, 2025. The place, the White House, Washington, D.C. U.S. President Donald Trump met South African President Cyril Ramaphosa. A pretty big deal, you might say. The official aim was to reset relations between the two nations. Tensions had been simmering for a while, you see. So, this meeting was presented as a chance for a fresh start. Everyone was watching to see how these two very different leaders would interact. Now, South Africa's domestic political situation is, shall we say, rather complex. President Ramaphosa currently leads a coalition government. His party, the African National Congress, lost its outright parliamentary majority. This means they are now governing with the Democratic Alliance. Some observers might call them unusual political partners. Meanwhile, the Economic Freedom Fighters and the MK Party form a vocal opposition. So, Ramaphosa arrived in Washington with quite a lot on his mind, even before the talks began. President Ramaphosa didn't come alone, of course. He arrived with his delegation ready for serious discussions. They even brought along some rather thoughtful gifts for their American hosts. One notable item was a book showcasing South Africa's beautiful golf courses presented to Mr. Trump, a diplomatic gesture, perhaps an attempt to find common ground. The South African delegation included prominent figures like trade union leader Zingiswa Losi. John Steenhuisen, leader of the DA, was also reported to be present, possibly to project an image of unity. This wasn't just a quick meet and greet, a simple handshake for the cameras. Oh no. The delegation stayed at the White House for nearly 2 hours after the press corps had departed. That's a significant amount of time in the world of high-stakes international diplomacy. Mr. Trump is, of course, well known for his direct and often unconventional approach. There was a palpable sense of relief and satisfaction. The discussions unfolded successfully, with both sides addressing sensitive topics and finding common ground. Then, as many had anticipated, the conversation took a sharp turn. President Trump directly confronted President Ramaphosa. No beating about the bush, he reportedly presented news clippings, various printed articles, and even a video. These materials alleged a genocide and mass killings of white South African farmers. Mr. Trump apparently described the situation with stark words: death, 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 horrible death. He painted a very bleak and alarming picture of safety and land seizures affecting the white minority. President Ramaphosa, in response, had to tread very carefully. He maintained his composure, remaining calm throughout this direct challenge. He firmly refuted the claims of a targeted genocide. He explained that crime in South Africa is a serious issue, yes, but it affects all citizens across all racial lines. In fact, he pointed out, the majority of murder victims in the country are black. He unequivocally stated that there is no state-sanctioned genocide occurring, and invoked Nelson Mandela's legacy of peace. The issue of land reform in South Africa is undeniably a sensitive and contentious one. The country's new land reform law does permit expropriation without compensation, but only under specific circumstances deemed to be in the public interest. However, President Ramaphosa was quick to clarify an important detail. To date, no such expropriations under this new law have actually taken place. He further assured President Trump that his government does not target white farmers and actively sidelines those who call for violence. Mr. Trump, however, had more to say on these matters. He reportedly suggested that the South African authorities should consider arresting Julius Malema. Mr. Malema is a prominent and often controversial opposition leader in South Africa. Quite a statement to make about another sovereign nation's internal political affairs. Trump also mentioned that he hadn't made up his mind about the alleged genocide, despite the evidence he presented. This was alongside the fact that the U.S. had recently offered refugee status to a number of white South Africans. Despite the initial tension, the meeting concluded on a positive note, with both leaders agreeing to continue working together on these complex issues. This high-stakes meeting wasn't just attended by politicians and their aides. Oh no, the guest list was quite something. Several prominent South African figures were present for parts of the discussions. Celebrated professional golfers Ernie Els and Retief Goosen were there. Business tycoon Johan Rupert, a significant voice in South African commerce, also attended. And perhaps not surprisingly, entrepreneur Elon Musk was in the room. A gathering of considerable influence, all witnessing this rather intense diplomatic exchange unfold before them. So, what role did these influential guests play? Johan Rupert reportedly supported President Ramaphosa's position. He reiterated that crime in South Africa affects all demographic groups, not just one. Ernie Els, a sporting icon, spoke of his pride in his home country. Elon Musk, according to reports, watched President Trump's video presentation with keen attention. Mr. Musk has, in the past, posted on social media about claims of genocide in South Africa. He has also expressed an interest in exporting Tesla vehicles to the South African market. Remarkably, despite the very public and pointed confrontation over the genocide allegations, the leaders did manage to discuss business. President Ramaphosa later described these economic talks as successful. It seems that even amidst significant disagreement, the focus could shift to trade and investment. The United States is, after all, South Africa's second biggest trading partner. So, the economic relationship is crucial for both nations. It seems that sometimes money can indeed talk, even when other conversations are proving difficult and contentious. South Africa certainly came to the table prepared for these economic discussions. They presented a detailed proposal for a new trade deal. A key component of this proposal was the potential purchase of liquefied natural gas from the United States. This particular aspect was reportedly received positively by President Trump. Discussions also covered future cooperation on mining rare earth metals and critical minerals, vital for modern technology. However, a potential 30% U.S. import tariff under suspended tax plans casts a slight shadow over future trade. The meeting, as you can imagine, sparked a wide range of reactions once the details emerged. The Council on American Islamic Relations, CAIR, offered some sharp criticism. They accused President Trump of focusing on what they termed an imaginary genocide in South Africa. They felt he was doing this while ignoring other pressing global humanitarian crises. Back in South Africa, opposition leader Julius Malema dismissed the entire meeting as mere gossip. He criticized President Ramaphosa for, in his view, appeasing Western interests and power. Derek Johnson, the president of the NAACP, also issued a strong statement. He described President Trump's conduct during the meeting as shameful and appalling. Mr. Johnson accused Trump of promoting falsehoods and propaganda. He argued that this was a deliberate attempt to create racial divisions. These powerful reactions underscore just how deeply sensitive the topics discussed truly are. They also highlight how the same event can be interpreted in vastly different ways, often depending on one's own perspective and political standpoint. President Ramaphosa, maintaining a diplomatic front, expressed a degree of optimism following the talks. He stated that he expects President Trump to visit South Africa in the future. He also confirmed that the United States would participate in the upcoming G20 summit. This is particularly relevant as South Africa is due to take over the G20 presidency next year, a significant international role. President Trump, however, did not explicitly confirm his attendance at the G20 meeting in South Africa later in November. So, that remains a point to watch. What does all this mean for the future of U.S.-South African relations? It's undoubtedly a path that will require careful navigation from both sides. Can new trade agreements and economic cooperation truly mend the rifts caused by such profound ideological disagreements? The narrative around white genocide, however disputed, remains a potent and divisive issue. President Ramaphosa must also manage his complex coalition government and domestic political pressures. Interestingly, South Africa's ICJ case against Israel concerning Gaza was reportedly not discussed. The future? It promises to be anything but dull.